The year was 2015, a year that would mark the beginning of a political journey unlike any other in modern American history. A crowded field of Republican hopefuls vied for the presidency, each with their own vision for the future of the country. Seasoned politicians, governors, and senators all threw their hats into the ring, believing they had what it took to lead the nation. Few could have predicted the emergence of Donald J. Trump as a serious contender. When he announced his candidacy, many saw it as a publicity stunt, a way to boost his brand rather than a genuine bid for the White House. Trump, a brash businessman with no political experience, upended the race with his unconventional style and populist message. His speeches were filled with bold promises and controversial statements that resonated with a significant portion of the electorate. He tapped into a deep well of frustration among working-class Americans, who felt that their voices had been ignored for too long. These were people who had seen their jobs disappear and their communities decline, and they were desperate for change. They felt left behind by globalization and ignored by the political elite. Trump's message of bringing back jobs and revitalizing American industry struck a chord with these voters. Trump's campaign rallies were unlike anything seen before. They were more than just political events, they were spectacles, drawing huge crowds and generating intense media coverage. They were raucous affairs fueled by anger and a desire for change. The energy at these rallies was palpable, with supporters chanting and cheering for their candidate with an enthusiasm rarely seen in politics. His message was simple, direct, and resonated with millions: "Make America Great Again." This slogan became a rallying cry for those who felt that America had lost its way and needed to return to its former glory. He promised to bring back jobs, build a wall on the southern border, and put America first. These promises were met with both fervent support and fierce opposition, but they undeniably struck a chord with a large segment of the population. His supporters saw him as a political outsider, someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo and take on the establishment. They believed that he was the only one who could truly shake things up in Washington. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo. His blunt, often controversial statements set him apart from the polished, cautious rhetoric of traditional politicians. Trump's rise was met with disbelief and disdain by the Republican establishment. Many party leaders were shocked by his success and worried about what it meant for the future of the GOP. They viewed him as a threat to their power and influence. His outsider status and willingness to break with party orthodoxy made him a disruptive force within the Republican ranks. Many party leaders refused to endorse him. They saw his candidacy as a danger to the party's values and long-term prospects. Some even actively campaigned against him. High-profile Republicans spoke out against Trump, warning that his divisive rhetoric and unorthodox policies would be disastrous for the country. The media dismissed him as a sideshow, a joke that would soon fade away. Pundits and analysts predicted that his campaign would implode under the weight of its own controversies. But Trump's supporters were not deterred. They believed in his message and were determined to see him succeed, no matter what the critics said. They turned out in droves on Election Day, propelling him to a stunning victory over Hillary Clinton. The election results defied the expectations of nearly every political expert and pollster. Trump's win sent shockwaves through the Republican Party and the country. It was a moment that would redefine American politics for years to come. It marked a seismic shift in American politics, the full ramifications of which are still being felt today. The election of Donald Trump signaled a new era, one characterized by deep divisions and a rethinking of traditional political norms. The party of Lincoln, once defined by its commitment to free trade and limited government, had become the party of Trump, a populist movement fueled by nationalism and a distrust of elites. This transformation would have lasting impacts on the Republican Party and the broader political landscape. Trump's victory was more than just a political upset. It was a seismic shift in the American political landscape, a moment that defied conventional wisdom and upended the status quo. It was a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, a party that had long been dominated by establishment figures and traditional conservative values. He didn't just win the election, he redefined what it meant to be a Republican. His campaign was a direct challenge to the old guard, and his victory signaled a new era for the party. His brand of populism, with its focus on economic nationalism and cultural grievance, became the dominant force within the party. This was a stark departure from the party's previous focus on free market principles and global engagement. This shift was evident in his policies, his rhetoric, and his choice of allies. Figures like Steve Bannon, who championed a more nationalist and populist agenda, became central to his administration. Gone were the days of Republican presidents championing free trade agreements and open borders. The party's new direction was clear: America first. Trump tore up trade deals. He imposed tariffs. These moves were designed to protect American industries and workers, even if it meant disrupting long-standing economic relationships. He made immigration a central issue of his presidency. The construction of a border wall and the implementation of stricter immigration policies were key components of his agenda. He appealed directly to the anxieties of working-class Americans who felt left behind by globalization. These were the voters who had seen their jobs disappear and their communities decline. He promised to bring back jobs and protect American workers from foreign competition. This message resonated deeply in the Rust Belt, where manufacturing jobs had been decimated. Trump also weaponized cultural issues in a way that previous Republican presidents had not. He tapped into a sense of cultural dislocation and fear of change. He stoked fears about immigration and crime, painting a picture of a country under siege from external threats. He attacked political correctness and the media. By branding the press as the enemy of the people, he galvanized his base and created a narrative of us versus them. He presented himself as a defender of traditional values and a bulwark against the forces of liberalism and multiculturalism. This message resonated with many who felt their way of life was under threat. This resonated with a segment of the Republican base that felt increasingly marginalized in a rapidly changing society. They saw Trump as a champion of their values and concerns. This populist playbook proved to be remarkably effective. It allowed Trump to build a coalition that cut across traditional political lines. Trump's message of economic nationalism and cultural grievance resonated with a large swath of the electorate, particularly in the Rust Belt states that had long been considered Democratic strongholds. These states, with their history of industrial decline and economic hardship, were fertile ground for his message. His victory in these states, once thought to be part of the Blue Wall, demonstrated the potent appeal of his message and the extent to which he had reshaped the political landscape. The success of his populist playbook showed that the old political rules no longer applied, and that a new era of American politics had begun. The emergence of the Trump voter was perhaps the most significant development in American politics during this period. This new wave of voters brought a seismic shift to the political landscape, altering the dynamics of elections and reshaping the strategies of both major parties. These were voters who were often disaffected from the political process, feeling ignored or even looked down upon by the political establishment. They felt that their voices were not being heard, and that their concerns were being dismissed by those in power. They were drawn to Trump's authenticity, his willingness to challenge the status quo, and his promise to fight for the forgotten man. Trump's unfiltered style and direct communication resonated with these voters, who saw him as a breath of fresh air in a political environment they viewed as stale and corrupt. These voters were united by a shared sense of economic anxiety and cultural displacement. They felt that the rapid changes in society were leaving them behind, and they were searching for a leader who understood their struggles and would advocate for their interests. They had witnessed the decline of manufacturing jobs in their communities and felt that the American dream was slipping away. The loss of these jobs not only affected their financial stability, but also their sense of identity and purpose. They were wary of immigration, both legal and illegal, which they saw as a threat to their jobs, their culture, and their way of life. The influx of immigrants was perceived as competition for scarce resources and opportunities, exacerbating their sense of insecurity. They were also deeply suspicious of the media and the political establishment, which they believed were out of touch with their concerns. The mainstream media was often seen as biased and untrustworthy, further fueling their sense of alienation. Trump tapped into this wellspring of resentment and channeled it into a powerful political force. His ability to articulate their frustrations and present himself as an outsider willing to take on the establishment made him a compelling figure for these voters. He gave voice to their anxieties and offered them a sense of hope that he could restore America to its former glory. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," encapsulated their desire for a return to a time when they felt more secure and prosperous. He promised to bring back jobs, rebuild the middle class, and put America first. These promises struck a chord with voters who felt that their economic opportunities had been eroded by globalization and technological change. His message resonated with these voters who saw in him a champion for their values and interests. They believed that Trump would prioritize their needs and fight for policies that would benefit their communities. The emergence of the Trump voter had a profound impact on the Republican Party. It forced the party to reevaluate its platform and strategies, as it sought to accommodate this new and influential constituency. It broadened the party's appeal, attracting working-class white voters who had previously voted for Democrats, or not at all. This shift realigned the political landscape, creating new coalitions and altering the balance of power within the party. However, it also alienated some traditional Republican constituencies, such as suburban women and college-educated voters, who were turned off by Trump's rhetoric and policies. This created internal tensions within the party, as it struggled to reconcile the diverse interests of its supporters. The rise of the Trump voter marked a new era in American politics, one characterized by deep divisions and a redefined political landscape. As the nation continues to grapple with these changes, the legacy of the Trump voter will undoubtedly shape the future of American democracy. The Trump era witnessed a dramatic shift in Republican policy priorities. Gone were the days of focusing solely on tax cuts and deregulation. Trump's agenda was driven by a populist and nationalist ethos, prioritizing American workers and industries over global interests. This was evident in his signature policies on trade, immigration, and foreign policy. Trump's trade policy was a radical departure from his Republican predecessors. He viewed trade deficits as a sign of weakness and believed that other countries were taking advantage of the United States. He imposed tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, and other countries. He renegotiated trade deals like NAFTA, which he argued were unfair to American workers. These actions upended decades of Republican orthodoxy on free trade and sent shockwaves through the global economy. On immigration, Trump took an even harder line. He made it a central issue of his campaign, promising to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border and crack down on illegal immigration. He implemented a zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of families at the border. He restricted legal immigration as well, reducing the number of refugees admitted to the United States and making it more difficult for people to obtain visas. These policy shifts reflected a fundamental realignment within the Republican Party. Trump's focus on economic nationalism and cultural conservatism marked a significant departure from the party's traditional emphasis on free markets and limited government.